Alright, let's do this. I've been on a Pokemon kick lately, and thinking about my childhood Pokemon career made me realize some things. So, let me just ask you once before we start, and then I'll ask again at the end and see if your answers changed. But, are you a Gary or an Ash? And I think we all know what that means, but just to define a little, a Gary is a trainer who typically cared more about winning than the Pokemon in their party, and an Ash, vice versa, more attached to the Pokemon than the winning. And you might think that's a very straightforward distinction, but today I'm going to show you how blurry those lines get. See, I don't remember everything about my first playthrough, but I do remember some select things from it that we're going to chat about and decide whether I was a Gary or an Ash. So remember to subscribe and hit that like button, because our starting point is Leaf Green circa 2005, so the game had been out for at least a year, which is important information for later, but this was the first Pokemon game I'd owned, not played, which meant I was sort of familiar with the game, enough that I knew what it was about and what to do to an extent. And having played the game on someone else's save and older cousins at a holiday get-together, my cousin for some reason did not have his starter in his party and did not have a full party of 6. He was on the route entering Cerulean City, and I remember him telling me not to save so his game could be preserved where it was. And I only played for about 45 minutes, but in that time it was enough for me to get the gist enough that I beat the Nugget Bridge, and I met my cousin's rival who had a name that I can't say here. Well, I mean I can, but I won't because it's just in poor taste. So let's just call him N. Well, N wipes my team with a water-type turtle, and looking back with more context now, I didn't know, but at the time, that turtle was a starter, and it meant that my cousin had chosen the fire starter, Charmander, which brings me back to my first playthrough. I chose Bulbasaur. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I aptly nicknamed it Rudy, and that meant my rival, who I finally understood could be named something else, and I couldn't bring myself to stick with the theme of bad words, so I just named him Gary. In our first battle, I won pretty easily as par for the course and set off on my journey. Now, most people, upon getting the ability to finally catch Pokemon, they explore, level up the Pokemon they have, and usually try to catch at least one of every type they see just to be thorough. But not me. I just wanted cool and strong Pokemon, so whenever I entered a new area, I would find a patch of grass and just look around, and if a Pokemon was too low level or just didn't look cool enough, I would KO the first and maybe second of any species I found and then just run from the rest. And I can tell you now off the bat, Pidgey, Rattata, Weedle, and Caterpie did not look interesting at all. But I did happen to find a Pikachu in Viridian Forest, and since Pikachu to an idiot 8-year-old was obviously the strongest Pokemon based off the anime, I couldn't just let it get away, and so for the first quarter of the game I only used Rudy and my unique one-of-a-kind Pikachu, who I named Bolt. It was so clever and had never been done before. Also, I didn't realize that Pokemon had genders, so my female Pikachu named Bolt was sorta unique, I guess. But I believe I used this team all the way up until after I got to Cerulean City and encountered my rival again, to which he continuously wipes my two-man team and I have to go looking for a third Pokemon, and to be very honest, I don't even remember what Pokemon I caught because it was immediately replaced after I defeated my rival and Nugget Bridge and was able to get an Abra, who I was sure, even though it could do nothing, would be an asset to my team, and since Abra couldn't do anything but teleport, I finally had to participate in my first grinding session. Now, I'm gonna do something weird here and skip all the way to the end of my journey so we can talk about the actual points I wanted to talk about, now that you have a bit of context on how I played the game. Starting with my starter, I chose the grass type starter Bulbasaur exclusively because I thought it was the most animal pet like. Squirtle and Charmander were just too humanoid for my first playthrough, I guess, and since I chose the grass starter in Kanto, I had a relatively harder time in the beginning of my journey, having to face Brock, then Misty, and not to mention my rival, all who swept me numerous times, and not even getting swept, I still lost a lot, but like I said, I rarely did grinding unless I had a specific goal in mind, or had a particularly low level and unusable Pokemon in my party that I wanted to be there for a specific reason. So instead of grinding and knocking out tens if not hundreds of random low level Pokemon, why not just throw what you have against the wall until that wall breaks? Meaning, I would just keep going to the same trainer I lost to and fighting until I lost or won. Most times I didn't even prepare for battles. I would just white out, watch the center healing animation, and beeline it straight back to the guy who just knocked me out. Real Dormammu I've come to bargain type though, you get me? I'm not buying potions, I'm not facing any other trainers, I am raw dogging Brock until I can make his little rock worm go limp, which, in the context I've used it, is in no way offensive to anyone. And be clear, that legendary Bulbasaur never left my party, not even once. I didn't even think about it, so much so that whenever I went into my box in the PC, it didn't even register as an option to swap it out. That soldier made the entire journey. He saw him come, he saw him go, some he never saw again, but until the very last fight was fought, Rudy was a good soldier and a damn good man. May his soul rest easy in the tall grass in the sky. Now, moving along from that, I have a little confession to make. I got stuck on the Safari Zone and could not figure out how to get to the little building in the back. And I know that sounds incredibly stupid, but remember I was like 8 and I had a horrible sense of direction as a kid. Something I've wholly overcome now, as I'll demonstrate. The subscribe button is below this video right about here, and if you'll check my work by tapping that button and allowing me to get that feedback for a more accurate location in the future, we'll be most grateful. Thank you. I'll be here all week. My point is, I ended up looking it up online, which, because the game was already a year old, most of the answers were online. So I did it with a few things like navigating the caves to find Arcticuno, even stupid stuff like how to get the other starter off of Oak's desk. And this was actually one of my first instances of using the internet to look for things rather than just being shown a website or told where to go. And honestly, I think that's the norm for people around my age at that time. Like, it wasn't uncommon to have half a web page dedicated to describing how to solve or fix something in the game. But I probably could have figured out those things if I had just fumbled around in the game a bit more. What I couldn't have looked up was how to pay attention, because I made it to the Elite Four with the poor practices I had, and unlike the rest of the game, this was a hard stop for me. Like, I could not figure out why these teams were so good with Pokemon I had KO'd easily in the wild. Like, I know Dugong. It's annoying, but it's not a mass murderer, so why for some reason the Aurora Beam is decimating my team, I'll never know. And speaking of team, if you paid attention, you might be saying, Mino, you said you caught an Abra and went out of your way to grind and trained it, and psychic types are some of the best in that game. What happened with that? Well, observant viewer, I had one psychic type move and it was Psybeam, and the rest were either normal moves or TMs from Mega Kick and like Metronome, I think. Not a very good show. Though it did decent, it just didn't have the defense and PP to keep up for more than like 2 Elite Four battles. And that's what led me to spamming items. I went from raw dogging battles to well done catting them. I was using full restore after full restore. I'm talking buying the vitamins. It was calcium for everybody. I'm buying full revives like they're toilet paper and somebody coughed a little too hard. I am selling things I've had in my pack for a rainy day on the rainiest days. I'm dumping my savings so that I can invest in myself. I will be the champion at any cost, literally. And then it hit me. My rival's been running around talking to me like I'm some sort of weak loser. And even though I beat him at every turn, it was only because of a save mechanic. If the game is saved after every battle and you couldn't rematch, I wouldn't have made it past the first trainer in Brock's gym. I guess I am a loser. But what's even loserier is that I spent my whole time trying to be champion and beat the game because I know that that's what games are for. Sure, I like the exploring and catching and battling of Pokemon. Hell, I love everything about it, but had this been real, would my decisions have reflected that? The truth is, I don't think so. From my point of view, I was just doing what I thought would make me win, but in terms of my team of Pokemon, I made them go into battles knowing they would faint just to get the extra experience and not have to run 1,000,000 miles in tall grass and do twice the battles. I had a very basic understanding of the balancing mechanics, but my team wasn't made efficiently, nor was it made with care. I just threw whoever looked good in, and if they didn't work, I didn't spend any time trying to make them work. I just boxed them and got another Pokemon. I ended up relying more on items than the actual Pokemon I had made this whole journey with. Even down to the gameplay, I went places as fast as I could, didn't explore unless I needed to, and skipped and ignored dialogue as much as I could, and only really battled trainers I had to battle. So can I really say I enjoyed the game? Well, yeah. I was a kid, so a lot of things just weren't clear or important to me, but as I got older and ironically more mature, I started treating these digital pocket monsters as actual Pokemon on a team that I'm traveling with, not to be the champion, but to be the best team. So now that we've talked about it, let me ask you again, are you a Gary or an Ash? And if you're asking me, I was a Gary, yeah, but I think the best part of Pokemon is growing into an Ash and looking back knowing how far you've come. And trust me, you've come a long way. So, I hope you enjoyed the video, because I appreciate you watching, and until next time, peace.
That thunder on me clap, make a nigga think before he act. Have a nigga dying on his back, then we double back. Shooters leaving rubber where you at, that's why niggas never wanna match.